give me. The most important one is that the ladies' toilet is down there. The gents, just round the corner where Nigel Murphy used to smoke, is down there. The red wine has been donated by John Peters, for which we're very grateful. And there should be wine on the table, but if you want other drinks, then my friend Pearson at the bar will look after you very well at the back there, so you can always do that. I've been asked to say, you know, if any of you pitch in town at any stage, we can always have an informal gathering. You know, if 2 or 3 are gathered together, we can have an impromptu gathering. So that's not a bad idea. And then one of the widows has asked me to say that please would I express on their behalf their pleasure that they are invited. Well, all I want to say is that the pleasure is entirely ours. I mean, it's so wonderful that although they're no longer married to the spouses that we knew at the time at school, that they still come along. Peter McCann contacted us and said he was so sorry not to be with us, and he wrote quite an eloquent letter, which I won't read out at this stage, but he normally does our graces for us, because he's one of the few who went into the cloth after leaving school, and that was the case with him. But anyway, he sends very, very good wishes. I've had a little bit of a difference of opinion with Brian du Toit, and I have to sadly admit that he was right. The matrics that wrote matric and were represented in the 1955 OD magazine numbered 69, and I couldn't make this gel with the fact that I'd always thought there were about 80. And Brian du Toit did all the maths successfully, and there were in fact 81 in our matric year, and 12 fell by the wayside or didn't write matric or whatever, but that was one hell of a big class. And out of that, sadly, we have lost 28 of our number. And I'm going to ask you in a moment, before we have grace, please to stand up and in memory of those, and they are printed on the back of the menu. So those are all the ones who have left us and have gone to higher purchase. The 6 who have died since the last time are David Crean, Pat de Brain, John Lesueur, Neil McGregor, and John Phillip. So can I ask you to just stand and observe a short silence?
Lord, for this food we are most grateful, and we wish that we can serve you as well. Amen. Amen.
Said to Agatha Christie, you know, isn't he sort of losing interest in you? She said, not at all. The older I get, the more interested in you. So with that, Adrian Martin, thank
you. Peter always introduces me and says that I put people to sleep. In fact, our job is to wake people up. And the reason for this is that if the person does not wake up, we have a hard time collecting the bill. That in itself is a good reason. I've been charged with a couple of things. The first is to make some personal reminiscences about the time at school. And I thought about this, and I thought, well, first of all, reminiscences can be hazardous. Peter himself made maybe a misreminiscence about which math grade he was in. He said he was in the 4th math grade And this has come to bite him. He was castigated and berated at the time for saying that. And yesterday, it came up again. Whenever he brings it up, people berate him. I think it's terrible that people do this to him. If he had known the difference between the third and the fourth math set, he would probably have been in the second math set. Then he would have become an engineer or a rocket scientist, and we would never have got those wonderful bird books that he's producing. Give him a break. All right. I was thinking now, what reminiscences can I produce that of any interest to anybody? And I looked at the pictures on my wall. I have pictures of all you guys, or nearly all you guys, on the wall, various pictures, and they all fell into the same format. There's a row of chairs and important people sitting on the chairs. The lesser important people standing behind them. And on the ground in the front is yours truly. Every single picture. Like that.
We thought you were standing.
Sometimes I had company, but often by myself. I remember the under something 15 Grey House cricket team. There's Ian Brown sitting in the middle, looking like a cat that swallowed a goldfish, and surrounded by important acolytes, and there on the ground in the dirt. Me. So it goes on through the years. John Charlton, I remember, is in one of these things. Sometimes I shared the ground with other people. The second team, rugby, under 19, second team, I'm on one side on the ground, on the other side is, I'm just blanking out here, who did the trees today?
Ivor Jardine.
Yes, Ivor Jardine. You know this picture. And there we are, groveling in the dirt, and sitting comfortably and with dignity in a chair is Quill Herman, in the middle, with us at the foot. And so it went. So then we, you know, in this school, one got to know one's place. It didn't stop there. 50 years later, we had a reunion, and the day after, we had a party at John's place, John Charlton, the honorary chairman, and he conducted the ceremony as usual, and guess what? There were to be pictures. And you will all remember this, right? We were on the lawn there, and chairs were brought out and put in a row, just as they were. And guess what? We were divided up into houses. So we had, you know, founders in strange places. They all had their chance. And then came Grey House, and guess what? The chairs were taken by people like John Charlton and Ian Brown and God knows what. On the ground, on the wet lawn, getting grass stains on my trousers, there I am. It's just unbelievable. I'm not making this up. You can look at that picture in the magazine that came out that year. What can I say? Well, I think that part of the deal today was this tour of the school with Paul Murray. And he sort of gave some insight into what the school was supposed to be doing. And I remembered Claude Brown. who said that the purpose of the school was to put a veneer of civilization onto us savages. And Agape used to say that the important thing was the development of character. And he said that many times. I never quite knew what he meant. But now, it becomes obvious that this recurrent humiliation of being put on the ground and made to sit in wet grass and stuff was all part of that character development. It went along with other things like weeding the lawn in front of the music school, which was surely a waste of time. I walked by there this afternoon and the weeds are still there. What else? I was whipped on the butt by a pimply 17-year-old prefect for having no lock on my locker in the Grey House locker room. What else was there? Oh, marching back and forth on Wednesday afternoons. Generally ending up exactly where you started. That didn't make any sense. Sitting in detention on Saturday morning. I had to learn the French words for about 50 different vegetables and fruit. I knew that I would never go shopping in Paris with my aunt. Why did they make us learn this stuff? It was for the development of character. When it came to this last thing with Charlton's lawn, they could have given me a chair. He had more chairs in the dining room. I saw them. But I guess they figured that my character still needed a bit of work. Well, okay. Flippancy aside, I think that the reason that we have such a fantastic turnout of survivors here is not only because of the work of our committee, which is amazing, but also because we all have a feeling of goodwill and nostalgia and just generally a positive idea about this place, which, let's admit, was and is a very special place. So, ladies and gentlemen, please rise. If you can. Gentlemen, Floreat Bishops.
Floreat. Some Latin word or other.
I think it's only fair that you should know who they were. Ian Brown, who did an enormous amount of work writing out minutes, which of course Margie then typed for us. The others were Lawson Howes and Peter Newton and Len Ward, who's going to be in charge of our musical arrangements this evening, and the inimitable Brian du Toit, who's struggling to get this book published, and you're all enjoined to make sure that you submit something to him, otherwise hell will freeze over. We had some good teachers. I know certain people in the room who don't agree with that, but anyway, I think we learned a tremendous amount. I love people like Lionel Left and Rex Pennington and all those wonderful teachers, even old Psyche in the zoology class. He used to take the mickey out of the poor guy, but he was fun, and we all seemed to manage to pass zoology, so that was all good fun. But there were some amongst us, and I won't mention names, but he's someone we had a lot of trouble finding, but he's eventually come, who thought that there was no reason to let schooling, to allow schooling to interfere with your education. I won't dwell upon them. Now, there have been changes beyond our wildest imagining. The headmaster can disabuse me if I'm wrong, but I believe you can send your homework by email to your teacher these days. You Google things and all this sort of thing, and the technology is beyond our wildest imaginings. I mean, I've got grandchildren, and I don't understand what they're doing, except that their fingers are always doing something with little things in front of them. But the important thing is, and I think this is very profound, that education is what is left when you've forgotten all that you've learnt. Now, that sounds like a paradox, but it's not. What I'm trying to say is that it's the values that remain behind. I can't remember equations, not that I ever understood them anyway, and I can't remember anything that I was taught very much except the poetry, which I enjoyed. But the point is, I remember the values, the camaraderie, and the fun that we had at the school, and that is really what matters. So, although all this technology has taken over, the actual values are still at a basic level. And that is the important thing, and that's what I really I'm trying to stress. You know, the old order changes, the yielding place to new, but the new doesn't have to efface the original values, if you see what I'm getting at. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce Guy Pearson. I believe he's got two brothers who are also headmasters, so obviously it runs in the genes. And I've had the pleasure of meeting him at the what was it called, the Heritage thing. I don't think we had the pleasure of meeting you, but Marie, we're delighted to have you with us so that we can all meet you. And over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Peter, and really well done. What a wonderful turnout. And I hope you didn't choke eating, you guys from Top House and White eating on founders' plates. And you managed to get through the border post as you came through the door into Founders. I believe you had to cut a lock to get in tonight. They locked up when they heard all these folk from other houses coming into their domain. But it's great to have you all here. And I had a look at your magazine of 1954, just in preparation, and it was a fantastic year. I don't know if you remember that. Just some reminiscence around that. First of all, obviously the principal was Hubert Kidd at that time. You had a brilliant cricket season, captained by Ackerman. In fact, the team produced 5 Western Province and 3 SA schools caps. The rugby side was outstanding, captained by Peter. Played 21, won 17, lost 1, drew 3, and they went on a tour to Rhodesia. The athletics, however, was described as mediocre. Sorry about that. It was a year of great growth at Bishops. As you know, White House was opened, and the Memorial Theatre was built in 1954. What I've been asked to do is just to tell you a little bit about Bishops today. And as you know, you had a fantastic tour this morning by Dr. Paul Murray. And he's really an incredible man, as you know, as you have heard today. He was not a pupil of Bishops, but I don't think there's any person alive that has a greater passion for Bishops than Paul Murray has. Really an amazing man, a brilliant history teacher. If you were with him today, imagine being taught by him every day. Really, he will go down as one of our legendary teachers. But Bishops in 2014, as you know, we are now 3 schools in one. We have a pre-prep school, grade R, 1 and 2, so the boys come to school 5 years old. In the pre-prep, there are 220 boys in that school, and the school is on the other side of the avenue, as you know. Then they move across the road, across Campground Road, to that beautiful, wonderful prep school with that amazing character built around Stanmore Cottage. And there are 375 boys from grade 3 to grade 7. And in the college, which as you know goes from grade 8 to grade 12, I'm sure you all remember standards and those sorts of things, but now we call it grades. And there are 760 boys in the college, and we have a very small sixth form or post-matric group of 9 students who, by the way, none of them are Bishop's pupils. They come from outside. So in total, there are 1,360 boys from grade R to grade 12. The school is bursting at the seams. The demand for places is amazing. Of those, around about 40 have a connection to Bishops. They are OD sons or they are siblings of current students. So that leaves, if you can do your maths, around about 30 to 40 other places for everybody else. And for those 40 places, we get about 220 applicants. So you can see demand for places is amazing. And that is obviously both very healthy, but also very, very difficult when it comes to admission. Because there are people and boys and families that set their hearts on Bishops and they are not able to enter. And obviously, a major part of admissions this year is obviously things like the transformation agendas of the school and so on. So it becomes very, very tricky. Now, Adrian gave a great talk earlier on, and what I want to just emphasize is that I think if you go through the history of Bishops, one of the things that we try to do, which is to build character, is to have an all-round philosophy. As I read you those achievements of the class of 1954, we still try, in terms of the philosophy of the school, to have an all-round education. I always think of the education of the gentleman, the scholar, and the athlete, in that order. If you can think of that old philosophy, which is what a true education is all about. And as Peter said, central to what Bishops is all about is the chapel. It is today as it was through its 165-year history. The school was founded in 1849 by Bishop Robert Gray. It was founded at Protea, which is current Bishop's Court, with 6 pupils. In 1850, it moved to Woodlands because it had a massive increase in numbers to 15. 15 boys came across here in 1850, and today there are 1,360. And that was the foundation. It was the Anglican. It is the Anglican Diocesan Boys' School of the Western Cape, and we need to remember that that is our foundation. It's fascinating that recently we had a staff conference, and we invited the head boys over 3 decades, one in each decade, to come and talk to the staff at a conference about what was important to them about Bishops. And all of them independently mentioned the fact that that chapel had been so important in terms of its foundation. So in Bishops, the fact that also is that it's interesting because I love walking the Newlands Forest. I walk up there often. And anywhere on the Table Mountain, if you look down at Cape Town, the landmark is the chapel. The Memorial Chapel stands out anywhere that you are in Cape Town, so we need to remember that. In terms of our academic performance, last year, Bishops produced one of its best set of results in our history. We had last year a big matric class, 154 boys writing matric, and of those 100%, all the boys passed, but 98.7% of them achieved what is known as a university entrance pass, and that's allowing them to go on to university. But more important is that 12% of all subject distinctions were above 90%. And in fact, 1 in 6 boys achieved 7 distinctions or more. And in fact, 10 boys achieved 11 distinctions, which is quite extraordinary. Now you might say, well, how does that happen? Well, things have changed. For example, you can get 3 distinctions for mathematics, because you have these days what's called core mathematics, then you have paper 3 mathematics, which is a separate voluntary subject, and then you also have AP maths, which is advanced programming. So, and obviously many of our brighter boys do additional subjects as well. So in that way you can do 10, 11 subjects and achieve those amazing results. But you might say, you might be skeptical about those results in terms of what's happening in the country, but obviously one benchmarks oneself in various ways, and obviously the way we do that at Bishops is to write and participate in as many national Olympiads and expos as we can. And Bishops last year again won the UCT Maths Challenge for the 7th consecutive year in a row, and certainly 17 times in the last 20 years since that competition was started. So really, we're really proud of our academic performance. Most of our matriculants go to 2 universities, UCT and Stellenbosch. You'll be interested in that. Many boys like to go to Stellenbosch. And in fact, 3 of our boys from the class last year, one is going straight into Harvard, one boy is being accepted at Yale, and a 3rd boy at Berkeley. So that is very, very important. From a cultural point of view, as in 1954 today, the school is, out of the 760 boys in the school, 470 play musical instruments, which is quite fantastic. And you know, I don't know if in John Peake's time, the Eisteddfod was introduced. Those of you that are associated with the school have been. And the Eisteddfod happens at the end of the 2nd term. And it's an amazing event for a whole week where the whole school is involved in this competition around the arts. So every boy is involved in some kind of way, culminating in this fantastic singing evening, which has about 3,000 people attended. We have to go to a special venue for that. Last year we put on, the musical was Oklahoma, and this year, starting next week, is The Great Gatsby. We have 33 clubs and societies, so the cultural life of the school is very, very healthy. From a sport point of view, what has changed since you were here? Well, one of the things that changed, obviously, is that we have many more sports. You know, we have 22 different sports which the boys can play, which is fantastic. We've got more boys, obviously. In a boys' school like Bishop's, obviously rugby will always have a major role. But games like hockey today are a lot more popular. As you know, mothers don't want their sons to play rugby either. The game of hockey is improved because of the AstroTurfs. It's much faster and skillful and therefore attractive for boys to play. Cricket has challenges from games like water polo. And water polo is one of our strongest sports. We've got 2 pools, a water polo pool and a second pool. The water polo pool is heated now because boys train right through the year for water polo. Basketball is another game that's growing and so on. So you can see in the modern age we're living at where our youth want instant gratification. Standing on a cricket field from 9 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock is not that attractive anymore. So other than our A teams and our senior teams, we tend to, for our Bs and 3rds and 4ths, play 20-20 cricket, 35 over games to keep the interest of the boys. So those are the challenges we face. We also live in a very competitive environment. So if you're in the summer and you're playing your summer sport, your cricket, you will also be expected to be preparing for your winter sport. So you'll be involved in a training program, a conditioning program in games like hockey and rugby in preparation for the winter season. There's changes to the leadership program. These days, we obviously have our heads of houses, our 8 heads of houses, because we have 8 houses now. The other major change, obviously, is in the relationship between the juniors and the seniors. It is not as hierarchical as it was in your day. Obviously, there are things like the laws of the land which apply to bishops, as you know, and schools have had to adapt to them. And part of our adaptation is that, these days, the whole, call it what you like, but the term which was used in those days was the fagging system is no longer acceptable in the age we live. So the junior-senior relationship is much more of a mentorship program. There's the matric boy are involved in a mentorship role models for the junior boys. So those changes have made Bishops probably a much warmer and friendlier place for young boys to come into. But what I can say about Bishops, and I think that for me, it's one of the things which distinguishes it, is that, as you know, young adolescent boys, it's very important in terms of their own growth to have the sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves. And in that, the house system really works well. Now, as you know, in your time, there were 3 boarding houses and 2 day houses. That has changed now. There are 5 day houses and 3 boarding houses still, with the growth of the school. But that house system works very well because even our day boys have a physical space to go to So if you're in Grey House, you go to a building which houses the Grey House boys. They have a house master in charge of them. They have tutors that start tutors, and obviously all the competitions happen on an inter-house basis. So there's the sense of belonging, and yet Bishops does today and always has. And if you look at what we call our tagline, it inspires individuals. So you have this amazing situation where the boys love this place, they have a deep sense of loyalty to it. Why do you think we've got 31 out of 80 old boys back here tonight? And it'll be the same with this group of boys. They have a great sense of belonging and camaraderie in their school and their house, and yet the school recognizes that they are individuals. And I think that is the strength of the school. It always has been. That it provides space for boys to be creative, to be open-minded, not to take things at face value. Through the exposure in the clubs and societies and questioning the status quo while belonging to this amazing place called Bishop. So my message to you is that the school is in good shape. Yes, it is a changed school. It is a different school. It has moved with the times, but still fundamentally it holds the values on which it was founded in 1849, which is fundamentally that it is the diocesan school, and that on that are the values on which it's based. And I would like now to thank all of you for coming and ask us all to rise and drink a toast to the class of 1954. Class of 1954. A very good vintage.
Can I call on Conrad Gelke to thank the headmaster for that wonderful speech? He's come all the way from Vancouver in Canada. It's lovely to have him here.
Good, well, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Headmaster, and that's for bringing us up to date. It's very encouraging to hear what progress has been made. Paul Murray's trip, for those who read on it this morning, pieces of data in the recesses of one's mind are jogged, and one suddenly remembers things about the past and the good times and maybe the not so good times. But the sort of by and large, the fact that we're all here reflects what you have been talking about. Given that you're in charge, I have to mention your predecessor, Hubert Kidd. And I don't know whether you attend all the societies, but there was a society in our days which called the Debating Society, and I gather it was started by Principal Sedgwick, according to Paul, who I was unaware of, and was started in 1866 or something. So it's a society with a long tradition. But on one occasion, I was participating, proposing the motion that newspapers should present news and not views. And I presented the motion, and I felt rather good about it. And then they called for speeches from the floor. And the first person to stand up from the floor was none other than Hubert Kidd, who proceeded to demolish the motion. It was a total humiliation. So I don't know whether you participate in a debating society. If you do attend one of their debates, know that you will be following a tradition. The other thing that I should probably mention is the school motto, Pro Fide et Patria, and you certainly talked about both really in the terms of your speech, And so Latin was big. I don't know how big Latin is today in the school, but there's a story about General Smuts, and on one he saw an advert, and it said Ajax Moray Fruit, and he spoke to his assistant, who was also a Latin scholar. They were trying to work it out. It didn't actually, they couldn't work out what it meant until it was pointed out that it actually said, eat more fruit. Anyway, so much for the Latin scholars. And just a sporting comment here. This school has traditions drawn from Oxford University. That's where our Rhodes Scholars go. And I was told about this fellow in London who used to hire folk out of Oxford who'd done PPE, and they would come up for their interviews. And during the interview, he would go, and at the end, he would throw out the comment, "Oh, by the way, do you play golf?" And usually, a good number of them did. And then the question was, "And what's your handicap?" And quite often, and sorry, Warwick, they would say things like, "Do you have a 6, 7, 8, and feel very good about it." But what they didn't realize is that the person asking the question figured anybody who had a handicap below 10 should not be hired because they were spending too much time in golf course. Anyway, in thanking you, and Mr. Principal here, I have a little presentation for you. And I'll just take it out here so you can see what it's all about. This is a talking stick. And let me tell you what a talking stick is. It's for centuries, and this is carved in British Columbia by a carver in a reserve near Vancouver. For centuries, talking sticks have been used by the West Coast First Nations during potlatches and other ceremonial celebrations, symbolizing the sacred power and honor to speak uninterrupted, and it empowers the speaker to speak honestly and truthfully from the heart. The talking stick also serves as a reminder to the witnesses of their vital role of listening thoughtfully. When it is passed, the honor is then transferred to the next speaker. The talking stick teaches us to honor the sacred point of view of every living creature. And so this is a talking stick. This is an eagle, actually, and I'll rely on Peter Steyn to tell you about the eagle. And, so at meetings, if your staff get unruly, you can bring out the talking stick and sort of pass it around. And, but it also potentially has applications in domestic spousal situations.